Hey everyone, welcome back to Valley View Flower Farm. It's nearly the end of August and nearly at the end of my first year flower farming, so I thought I'd do a tour and show you what we've achieved on the farm so far. For those of you that are new to this channel, my name is Jaclyn and I am entering into my second year of flower farming in the Central West of New South Wales. As explained in my previous videos, this area that I operate the flower farm on is relatively new. All the work that you see here has been done in the last 12 months. So some of the plants are only newly established, and what I thought I'd do is give you a tour, and we'll start off in the perennial area where I grow most and trial most of my new perennials and work out whether I want to increase the number suitable for flower farming. So being that we're a working farm and the flower farm is situated close to our house, we have some areas of the farm that need to be, I don't know, hidden, I suppose. And this section here, this is the dog yard. We have working dogs, we have sheep and cattle, and we house the working dogs here. The dogs will be moved and relocated to another part of the property. So in front of that section, I have established a perennial garden. And the garden consists of mainly open beds of different varieties of perennials that I want to utilize as cut flowers. So this is towards the end of winter, and we will have frosts in this area up until the 1st of November. So that's up until the first day of the last month of spring. So quite a long spring period. So these perennials won't start leaping out of the ground until probably around November or December as we head into summer. Really the only thing I have flowering at the moment, and everything that's planted in here can be utilized as a cut flower, is the bulbinella, and this always flowers towards the end of winter. And you can see that the flowers do extend from the bottom of the flower head up to the top, which gives the bulbinella a very good vase life. Now when you cut them, they will wilt, not so much wilt, but bend, droop, I think is the right word, for a little while in the vase. And I'll put a picture up of an arrangement I made last year with the bulbinella. But then they'll right themselves and stand up, and they will last over a week in the vase. Vanilla is a great perennial to grow. It does seed itself a little bit and multiplies quite rapidly. So this was only a few plants last year, and from that I am going to get a nice little clump here in the garden. The eucalyptus is going really well. So this eucalyptus only went in last year, and it's probably 5.5 foot tall. I won't coppice it back too hard just yet. I will give it another year and then I will start cutting it hard. Billy buttons seem to be a great producer in my garden, and this is a clump that has overwintered from last year. It's pretty much produced flowers all year round, but the ones it produces in winter, the stems aren't quite as sturdy as they are now, getting prepared for spring. The stems here are quite a lot thicker. I'll show you another clump of billy buttons with the weaker stems, and you can see the stronger stems coming through. I did dig up and divide a lot of my billy buttons, which they did look fairly ordinary for a long time, like they were dying or dead, but they have come back from the base, so I'll show you those now. So under this large peppermint gum here, I have a little bit of a woodland native garden situation. The soil here is quite poor. It's on the edge of a ridge, so it's quite shaly and very well draining. Not great for most perennials, but good for those perennials that like it on the drier side. So in this section I have most of my natives, and I will do a separate video on the natives. They're establishing quite well. I've got lots of things in here like begonias that should hopefully come into flower this spring, and I'll do a video then. But in this section I have transplanted a whole heap of billy buttons, and as you can see, there's one there, There's one there. They've come back quite well, and they've got nice flower buds on the plants. Here's another clump here. So this little teeny tiny flower here is a Boronia, and obviously it's quite small. I only just planted this little plant a couple of weeks ago, and it has these beautiful lime green flowers. The plant is actually a shrub, and it should get a couple of feet wide, 2 or 3 feet tall, and I just need to give them probably a good fertilizer with a low phosphorus fertilizer to promote flowering for next year. So I didn't do a video last month because I was focusing on making new beds and expanding the garden and just tidying up here what we've got already in my little patch. So the patch is about 1/4 of an acre in size, and we've just recently added some new fencing. We've had issues with stock getting through the fencing, and I'll just show you this section down here. Down here is mainly South African natives, a few Australian natives in here. And as you can see on the other side of the fence, the land sort of drops away, and we have quite a few rocks and boulders. This area is very free draining, so it's a perfect spot to plant those plants who don't like wet feet. So along the fence line, they were the original plants, mainly proteas and leucodendrons. I did have issues with stock eating my plants, putting their heads over the edge, so my husband has only just recently put in this new fence with foot netting down the bottom to keep the rabbits out. I'll show you on the other side, and an electric fence because the cows do still like to put their head over the fence. That lucerne as a mulch is a great tempter for them to do that. So these plants are still quite small. Some of them a little bit frostbitten, but all of them have survived. You'll notice that my king proteas have turned an interesting shade of red, and that's due down to the cold temperatures. I did have a cow get into this section before we fixed the fence up, and it did snap off a couple of plants, but we'll just have to see how they go. So we're at the front, or the entry to the flower farm. Most of the beds are full. I've got a couple of little spots and spaces ready to put some more seedlings into. We have had a fair bit of success with the anemones, and I have a few beds full of anemones, and I hope to save the corms or the bulbs for next year. Over this side, I've experimented with overwintering of statice, and it hasn't been a success. I've had a couple of plants make it through, so next year I won't bother trying to overwinter statice. I think I'll just rip it out at the end of autumn and plant fresh again. In behind the alliums, we have some flowers, some anemone flowers just coming through, and Lebeau, the cat. So it is nice to see them. The stems are still quite short, and hopefully we will get some more longer stems as the season progresses. The alliums I have planted are Purple Rain, and they've come back nicely from last year. I could probably dig these up in this little section at the end of the bed and put them in the perennial section to add some more colour. Behind that I have Strawflower. I tried to overwinter Strawflower this year, but it wasn't overly successful in this patch. So in here are some new seedlings. Above that is a little bit more Statice that I left in, and the Granny's Bonnets or Columbine, which look really good this year. They did flower last year, a few flowers last year, but I think I'm going to have a much better show this year. This is one patch of overwintered feverfew, and I have another patch as well. It seems to fare quite well overwintering in my climate. Some early daffodils, and of course we have the Dutch iris, which are just humongous this year, a lot bigger than they were in the first year. They're about 4 foot high, and I do have one flower bud forming up already. Really impressed with Dutch iris. I have bought some more Dutch iris bulbs in different colours to add to the flower farm. Some more purple rain alliums here, interplanted in with some daffodils, some columbines, interplanted also with some nigella, and that all seems to work. I will end up having to dig this bed up, I think, at some stage and divide bulbs, but for the moment it's doing quite well. Along the entrance, flanking either side of the gate of the flower farm, we have roses planted. I have started to cut them back, not too heavily because it's their first year. I haven't fertilized them yet because we don't have enough growth on the plants to warrant fertilizing yet, but I will use sudden impact for roses as a fertilizer. I've got some irises as well flanking each side of the gateway. So in this section, this front section here, the beds are running north south, and I have 5 on each side of the main pathway. Each bed is 1.2 meters wide, and I think about 6 meters long in this section. And then of course another 5 beds on that side of the same dimensions. So another patch here of overwintered feverfew, a little bit of bronze fennel coming through from it going to seed last year, and you can't see much at the moment. Down here is my liatris, which I grew from seed last year, and I've got to say I've never grown many bulbs successfully from seed. However, the liatris has multiplied really well within its first year. As you can see, there's a clump there with all the shoots, and I'm growing a lot more now as well from seed. You could even save your own seed from the flowers. That seems fairly easy to do. Another little bed, lost a few anemones in this bed, so it's a little bit patchy, but that's okay. I'm going to save all the bulbs or corms for next year. This bed here is dedicated, some purple rain alliums there, to Achillea. I've got Achillea the Pearl, just some normal Achillea that I grew from seed in here, some more Achillea the Pearl, and a few random cone flowers, Echinacea, that I also grew from seed. I did have last year the Achillea in sections, different sections in different beds, but it really does take over. So it's now isolated in one bed together. I don't mind the Achillea that you can grow from seed, but the perennial variety really is the best. And I've invested in quite a few different perennial Achilleas for this year. They're not as invasive. I find they flower continuously, whereas the Achillea that you grow from seed, I find you get one good flush in summer and then maybe some small flushes throughout the rest of the season. But the perennial varieties, they just keep flowering. These two beds here are my peony beds. There is a few bulbs in here. Last year I had a heap of foxgloves and all sorts of things on top of the peonies, and I think that was a bit of a mistake. So I have cleaned all that out and transplanted a few, and I'm just now getting peony buds showing through. Here is a good example of the peonies just coming through now. These plants, the roots that I purchased weren't large, and I'll show you some other peonies that are first year planted peonies, and you'll see the difference in the vigor of the plants. So these 2 beds here are the newest beds that we've put in, and I planted these up. There's a video about growing peonies in Australia. These peonies I purchased from Gateforth Peonies in Tasmania, and they're absolutely massive. They only went in autumn, and as you can see, they're just, the roots were fantastic. They were healthy, they were large, and the results are that the foliage coming up now is just substantial. So it's definitely worth paying for good quality peony rootstock. So running east to west, we have 5 beds. They're I think they're 1 metre wide, these ones, and twice as long, so about 12 metres long. And there's 5 here and another 5 here, and then along the back there is an extra long bed on either side. The idea is in this centre section I can have tables, picnic tables, eventually. At the moment this section here is just overwintering bulbs, and mainly in here I've got globe thistle and sea holly, trying to get those established this year. There's some perennial status in here as well that I've grown from seed, and you can see the Skylar Veronica is coming back quite nicely. This bed is some more perennials. I hope to remove a lot of the perennials out and have a separate section for those. We've got some cafe cream perennial foxgloves, some snapdragons which I've tested for overwintering this season. We'll see how they go. Loosestrife, the purple loosestrife, it hasn't come back yet. That's it there. And we have some more Skylar Veronica, and mugwort here, which is another perennial. Some more Dutch irises. This is Achillea Walter Funk, or Walther Funk. It's a orangey, salmony coloured perennial Achillea, and it's one of those good performers, and I'm quite happy I divided that in autumn, and I've put that in a few spots now in the garden. This garden is looking a bit scrappy, but it is basically new perennials that I'm trying out for the first time and just seeing how they perform, and then if they're what I want to have in the garden, then I'll propagate them from there. It's just a cheaper way of, it's a slow way, but it's a cheaper way of starting perennials off, because they can be quite expensive to purchase in bulk. So this is my clematis coming back this year. Hopefully it might get to the top of the obelisk. That would be nice. I've got a few cut flower penstemon here that I've grown from seed, a little bit of Sweet William there. The rest of the bed is essentially liliums, which I oversow with larkspur, and I have some soapwort in there as well. That seemed to work really well last year, and actually I didn't have to do any seeding of the larkspur this year. It's all I let it go to seed, and it's all just come back on its own, which is fine with me. And where I don't want it, I can pull it out. Some more of that Achillea here. Some overwintered, they look a bit scrappy, but they're actually overwintered Sahara Rebecca, so quite happy with that. There's only about 5 plants there, and the rest of that bed is virtually empty. I need to re-top it with compost, and that'll be another space for planting. This section is my overwintered dahlias. They're all sleeping in the soil underneath the hay. They're staying nicely moist but not wet in the raised beds, which is ideal, and some Chrissies up that end. Now for my favorites, my ranunculus, and look how good they look. I have been feeding them. I gave them potash earlier in the season mixed with blood and bone. I have given them a soil inoculation. Populate is what I use, available in Australia by Nutrog. I've also given them sea mungus, and they are looking really good. I have had an issue with cockatoos coming in. That's why the netting is on. I probably don't need the netting, but the netting's more for the cockatoos in order to keep them off the beds. They are just snapping the plants at the base. I had an issue with these ranunculus, the plugs. I found that after planting, the plugs of some varieties started to die off, and I wasn't sure why. The compost I used was all the same. I treated them all exactly the same. They all went in at the same time. They all got watered the same way, but yet some varieties died off. I have noticed in the last few weeks that the ranunculus that died off early in the season are actually coming back. They're only really, really tiny. I'm not sure if you can see tiny little baby ranunculus plants. I'll zoom in. Can you see that one there? That is a weed, but that is a ranunculus. So I found it really interesting that they're now coming back when I thought they'd disappeared. They won't flower, obviously, but if they're there and I can keep them fed and they can develop some leaves, then they're potential plants for next year. Some more ranunculus here that I grew from corms, just a few. Some annual baby's breath, and this is a Morpho delphinium that I grew from plugs. This is another section here of ranunculus that I had massive problems with it dying off, and you can see the difference. Here's one bed and here's the neighbouring bed, like huge difference. Again, all the same conditions, and again the little baby ranunculus are starting to come back after I thought they'd completely died off. So what a bonus that is. Quite happy. They're still not as thick and a bit more sparse than the other ones, but yeah, still happy about that. In this bed here, at the end of the bed, is some Lisianthus. It has been a really wet spring for us and a really mild spring so far. And if I wasn't growing in raised beds, I think I would have lost quite a few plants. So I'm happy that I do grow in raised beds. And it also keeps the weeding down, which is handy because I don't do this full time. This is just a part-time gig. So this is another bed of ranunculus. They are really, really healthy. These are corms that I saved last year, and they're just doing so much better than the plugs. But the idea with the plugs is obviously to get them established, and then if you have the time and patience to dig them up at the end of the season and keep them for next year. The snaps that I overwintered, looking really good. Probably need to chop all these snaps down. They're not meant to flower in the cooler months. I think they're a 3 or a 4 Potomac snap, so they prefer the heat. The ones that have flowered, you can see that the flowers are too spread out. Nice thick stems though, but I can chop them back and let them reflush. Some bits and pieces in here, some Monarda. I'm going to try that again for a second year and see if I like it and see if I use it. I mean, there's a difference between liking a plant and then actually having a plant that you use in bouquets, so we'll see how that goes. Canterbury bells that have overwintered. This is empty, and another section of status that I tried to overwinter. This section is a little bit better than the last one we saw. The kookaburras in the background. We have a really nice community, like big family group of kookaburras on the farm. and particularly around this time of year they do lots and lots of calling, which is always nice to listen to. In this bit here I have some delphiniums that are coming back up, and I've just finished chopping all those back, and they'll be much bigger, nicer plants this year. Last year they were beautiful. They continuously flowered for me right through the season, so definitely worth having. I will remove them from this bed. I've got a new part of the garden I'll show you, which is a really long, skinny, narrow bed where I'm growing some more roses and some liliums. So I'm going to add the delphiniums there and save this space for annuals. This is a campanula. This should be better this year. It's not supposed to be flowering now. This is obviously an old flower spike. They're not super long stalks, but if you are making bouquets, these are ideal, and they're quite beautiful. Some more delphiniums that I transplanted and divided, and they look just like sticks, but there is quite a few shoots coming out of these. Delphiniums are easy to take cuttings from, like root cuttings from, and they're easy to divide. Some more granny's bonnets, a little bit of ranunculus here, and I have some perennials in here that I need to relocate. And I think I grew this from seed and it never flowered last year. It got to be quite a big plant, and I'm not sure what it is. I think it's a cornflower of some sort, like a perennial cornflower. But yeah, I'll dig that up and relocate that. I've got some teasel, and I've got some campanula and a few other bits and pieces in here. Nothing exciting really. In here I've got another clematis and a climbing rose on this obelisk here that my husband makes, and some reseeded larkspur there. The rest of this bed, liliums, and interplanted with honesty and a little bit of soapwort. And now for my absolute disaster, which has been my overwintered Lisianthus. What a disaster these have been. I'd say 90% of them are dead. I don't know why. And I had trouble with this bed last year, and I thought it was grub. I thought it was all sorts of stuff, because these Lisianthus were put in at the same time as I put the other lot in, and these have just suffered. I don't know. There's other things growing in. That's an annual salvia that's coming up there, and to be honest, I've just let it go because the plants are doing so poorly. I think I might end up digging out any seedlings that look like they'll make it and transplant those into another section, and then just dig up this bed and see if I can't salvage the bed and put some more compost on and fix it somehow. But yeah, what a disaster these ones have been. This one's pretty much empty, this bed. I've got some chrysanthemums here that I need to take cuttings from now that the weather's warming up. Some cotton that I need to pull out, and some where the hay is overwintered dahlias. This is the last bed. I've got some stock. I had problem with cockatoos ripping out my stock, and then I had problems with cats, but the rest look pretty good. I have some soapwort here. I have some cress, trying that for the first time. Some cress. And in here, it didn't survive as well, but that's the Morpho Delphinium. I think this is the blue one. The other one is the white. Still got some plants in there, just a bit sporadic. It's a real trick of knowing what's going to cope overwintering in your climate, especially when you're buying plugs. But there's enough plants there that will more than fill the requirements I have. This section here is my kale, and it is very heavily planted in this section. I only looked at trialing kale. I'm not too worried if it doesn't work out, but I just can't believe how healthy it is and how well it grows in this climate. So interesting to see whether I get anything from this heading towards spring or whether it's been put in too late. So this is the back section of the flower farm. My husband has clearly delineated the rest of his spud paddock, so I have, which is good really. I can be overly ambitious, and like I said before, considering I only do this as a side hustle, I really need to be practical. So the fence provides me with a good opportunity to put in a very narrow bed here, and the reason why the bed is so narrow is that we need access for vehicles up this back section. So in this section I have purchased a range of hybrid tea roses. I've left the labels on, and I'll put some tags on the roses so I know what I have. I've also got a range of double liliums planted here, and some of them are climbing roses, obviously to obscure the fence a little bit. The cows have access to this paddock when we're not growing spuds, so I'm sure they'll prune them up from their side. And the idea is obviously to follow along the fence line and around the corner as a connection. This will be all grass. That section there will be all grass, and then eventually in between the beds we'll have a section of wood chip. We've had a lot of rain lately, so it's quite muddy. And again, the bed will follow along this way, and I've just had to make a makeshift sort of bed in order to get those bare rooted roses in. I didn't want to keep them out of the ground for too long. And the roses are a mirror on each side of the gateway. The rock is all off our property. We've got a section through the farm that is quite rocky that we're clearing for accessibility in case there's a fire. So any spare rock I get my son to pick up with a bobcat, and he just puts poles out for me, and I use that to make new garden beds or edge them. So obviously the foot netting needs to be extended along here to keep the rabbits out, because they're a real problem. And then this section here will become a massive new garden for some more proteas and perennials. So that's the extent, the 1/4 acre. Here's my compost heap off the flower farm. As we are a working farm, things aren't as always as tidy as I would like, and it's been a real push over the last month or so to tidy things up. This is my husband's steel collection, and with respect to him, a lot of this steel is for projects for me in the garden, as well as projects he's working on for the farm. But all this will be removed. This whole area will be tidied, new gravel put down, and the whole area improved. These pipes here are for a new garden project, and I'm going to use these as elevated planters. These are 10 mil thick cast. They took a lot of cutting, and then they're old culvert pipes. I've got another set here. This is a new garden space I will show you now. So this area here, other than farm junk that my husband's collected, was also a lamb yard. We had potty lambs, a fenced off area to keep and to feed potty lambs in. It's also a bit of an eyesore because we have a power pole just here. So as this forms the entrance to my garden and to the flower farm, I wanted to do something to improve this space, and part of that was doing something to this section here. I obviously can't disguise the power pole or the power lines, but I can certainly soften the entry. So this will be the entry to the flower farm here. We have parking along either side of the garden there. All that farm junk is going to be relocated, and my husband's okay with that, so that's good. And then this section, I've just started to establish it now. It doesn't look like much at the moment. You can't see what's planted here because I've mulched it with hay, but this section is all planted out now with perennials, all cut flower varieties. This is my hotbed, so this is yellows, apricots, oranges and red flowers, lots of perennial Rebeckias, a few native plants in here, a few South African natives, and a touch of purple as well in this bed. So I'll do more updates on this bed as things start to grow in spring. This is a pathway, decomposed granite. The red hot pokers around the power pole need to come out. Probably shouldn't have them planted there anyway. I need to keep that area clear around the power pole for access. On the other side, where there's hay, I have finished planting. And then this again is full of perennials, a different colour scheme on this side. It's very wet here at the moment. These raised planters, I have some cold hardy aloes and some agapanthus, because agapanthus like their roots to be confined in a pot, and they're quite drought hardy. So they're going in these. This is an old section of metal culvert, so I'll fill some of the bottom up with rocks and then plant that out as a bit of visual interest. This area here is always very wet and boggy, so that will be gravelled, and I need to maintain access to that hose. The section there, this is my compost heap here, section there next to the compost heap will be some hydrangeas and some astilbe, because that faces east, so it only gets morning sun and it's quite damp as well. Some plantings along here to obscure the back of the compost heap. That shed's going, that trailer's going, that's going. Not sure where I'm putting those yet. There's also this old freezer is going to the tip, and my husband's spray unit will be put somewhere else, and then another garden extended along here. So it'll be island pockets of gardens in this area. So yeah, here's a before shot. I do have a plan. I just have champagne tastes on a beer budget, so I need to do a little bit at a time. These round beds here, they're full of garlic, onions, garlic, onions and beetroot. The middle one is wheat. Used a lot of wheat last year as a part of cut flower arrangements. And the last bed is a potato onion, which is like a shallot, and in the back of that is some flax, which is also a great seed pot addition to any cut flower arrangement. This is a little, oh, there goes the cat. This is a little pocket of garden that I've got some perennials in order to sort of disguise this fence. If you've seen any of my earlier videos, this was 12 months ago a paddock with sheep in it. So the conversion of this area has been quite slow. the soil isn't fantastic. And this little perennial section here is just, these shrubs will grow quite large and will block a bit of this fenced area off. So there you have it. That's it. You've seen the flower farm. Warts, big warts and all. We've got a long way to go. I think we've come a fair way in 12 months on a budget, and we'll just keep adding sections slowly, with the end plan of opening the garden eventually for a U-pick situation. Before that happens, I'm selling bouquets at farmers markets, and that's going quite well. So I envisage a good year this year, and yeah, just keep plugging on. So thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with my dodgy camera work. And if you've got any suggestions or any tips, anything you think I could be growing that I'm not, feel free to comment and let me know. But thanks for sticking with the video, and thanks for sticking to the end. Thanks for watching again. Bye.